It was quite an unworldly feeling. It's not one of those, you know, punch the air type jubilation events. The tops of mountains aren't like that. You've got the whole rest of the mountain. It's only half time. You've got no locker room to go into, you know.
Back at base camp, Lincoln's old friend and 1984 expedition member, Mike Dillon, is the first to hear the news in the communications tent.
That day that Lincoln got to the summit really started well for us because I just happened to be near the radio room and I heard his voice.
This is Lincoln. We're on the summit. We are on the summit.
Monitoring progress 8,000 feet below is expedition leader Alex Abramov. These are the actual radio transmissions.
Now begin, go down, go down. Don't forget that you need go down. Descent is also important, over.
We know that, Chris. We know that, and thank you for making it possible for us, or for me. Thanks, Alex. Bye.
And he was totally lucid, he was calm, and it was 9 o'clock in the morning, and everything was fantastic.
His wife Barbara receives the good news.
The phone call came to say that Lincoln had summited and, you know, wasn't it fantastic? But I did have this inner reservation because I hadn't wanted to hear about the summit. I just wanted to hear when I knew he was down and safe.
Lincoln now has the most dangerous part of the climb ahead of him, the descent.
We had a good rest on the summit. We were there for 20 minutes, and that was really long enough because I feel very uncomfortable on a, you know, it might be a magnificent place, but on a high summit I feel uncomfortable. I know that it's a very dangerous place to be. I know how quickly time can pass, how you can be mesmerised by the view. So we headed down, the three Sherpas and I.
150 feet below, another member of Lincoln's expedition, Thomas Webber, is forced to turn around.
Very close to the summit, Thomas had to turn back because he was starting to lose his balance and sort of veer off. Some of his mental functions were beginning to not work properly, and at that point the guide decided that they should head on down.
After the adrenaline surge of summiting, climbers on descent face a bigger battle: total exhaustion and the threat of running out of oxygen.
The descent of any big mountain is always the most exhausting part of the climb. And so I wasn't surprised when I started to feel incredibly exhausted. And there's this big snow slope which was like really easy descent. And I suppose that was a bit of a danger for me, perhaps, in the fact that I really didn't have to think about it, and that maybe allowed me to let my mental guard down.
Lincoln doesn't know it, but he begins to suffer from high-altitude cerebral edema. Low pressure is forcing fluid to leak inside his brain, causing it to swell. Symptoms are lethargy, hallucinations, and irrational behavior. Lincoln must descend immediately, or he will die.
And I just developed this incredible lethargy, and I didn't see it as anything other than lethargy. I wasn't unconscious, but I just lost it.
News of Lincoln's condition is yet to reach base camp. as the expedition leader is preoccupied with another unfolding tragedy. An urgent radio call is received from climbers 150 feet below Lincoln. It is Thomas Webber's guide.
Tom's dead. Oh, for f***'s sake.
Told you, now you're sure he is dead. Oh.
Oh,
He's halfway down the slope. It's a very dangerous place. He's staying down in the snow for more than 5 minutes. He's not breathing. Oof.
Hey, if you are sure he's dead, go down.
What apparently had happened was that Thomas had simply said to the guide, "I'm dying," and he died, just like that. Strange. He's had some premonition. It's just one of these strange things that happen on Everest.
jeez, what a tragedy.
But the worst news was, out of the blue, the expedition leader who was monitoring the activities high on the mountain suddenly told Thomas's Sherpa to go up again to help Lincoln, and he was in trouble, that Lincoln was in trouble. First time we knew about it.
Harry, I don't know how you feel yourself, but now Lincoln is very bad, and if it's possible, send one Sherpa up to help Lincoln, because Lincoln is near the dead also, and take one Sherpa oxygen and go down.
And this is a double terrible shock to us, because he was, as I said, there's no reason why anything should have gone wrong with Lincoln.
Thomas's Sherpa, Pemba, begins to climb back up the mountain to where Lincoln is fighting for his life.
I was struggling, but the Sherpas were struggling more because they knew that if they didn't get me down, I would die. That's what happens with cerebral edema. And I was being so uncooperative. It would have been the worst day of their lives.
Back at Advanced Base Camp, Lincoln's friend and fellow climber, Kevin Orgello, is manning the radio. Kevin came to Everest as part of a film crew, but was unable to acclimatize. He remained at Advanced Base Camp to support the team. His video diary records what happens next.
With information from the Sherpas, Lincoln is, I suppose, best described as crazy, as altitude crazy. I've just heard that the Sherpas are trying to literally kick him to move, but he's just gone mad.
It was a rough day for Kevin, because not only was he on the radio and suddenly hearing the news that Thomas had died, but a few hours later he heard that I was dying as well.
Lincoln!
I just hope Lincoln takes a big breath of oxygen and gets moving, because he's a good man.
The Sherpas have no choice but to try and manhandle Lincoln down to safety. In the communications tent, Lincoln's teammate Richard Harris tries to make him focus.
Lincoln, this is Richard. Barbara's waiting for you. Dylan and Dorsey are waiting for you. You need to come down now.
Pemba, Thomas Webber's Sherpa, arrives to help with Lincoln's rescue.
I'd have some moments of lucidity.
Yes. What are you doing here?
He said,
Thomas
Thomas has died. And that was just a huge shock. Just seemed so inconceivable, since he seemed to have been going so well. And then I shut down again.
Cerebral edema is toying with Lincoln's mind.
I thought I was in Queensland, a really severe case of wishful thinking. You know, I actually felt quite safe and quite happy just to be there. And then I heard an Australian voice speaking English.
Lincoln, I think that your mind is playing tricks with you and you are trying to fight the Sherpas. They're trying to help you down. Please help them. Help yourself for your family's sake and our sakes.
What I was actually hearing was Michael Dillon's voice on the radio.
It's so frustrating being down there because you're so far away from everything. You can't rush up and try and help rescue Lincoln. It's all you can do is try and rescue him with your voice.
The urging became so persistent. Suddenly I realised that in fact I was way up on this huge mountain and this was an exceptionally dangerous situation. I suddenly took the instruction to continue abseiling.
In his delusional state, Lincoln has to abseil down the treacherous second step. All the Sherpas can do is watch helplessly. In Australia, Lincoln Hall's wife, Barbara, waits anxiously for news from Everest.
And of course I had been thinking the whole time on my way home from work, calculating the hours and thinking when I got home at about 6 p.m. that there should have been a message by then, but there wasn't.
Then comes the worrying news that Lincoln is still near the summit.
I immediately felt really sick and full of dread because he would have been up near the summit for probably 6 or 7 hours, and I couldn't imagine what difficulty he was having.
At 28,000 feet, Lincoln's difficulty is the second step. This footage shows the 150-foot vertical rock face. In his disoriented state, it's proving extremely dangerous.
My mind was saying abseil, but my body couldn't handle it. I whizzed down the ropes, pretty well out of control. What happened was I swung across and slammed into Pemba to try and stop me hurting him so much. I sort of thought, well, I'll use the spring of my leg to slow down the impact, but unfortunately I had these spiky things called crampons on the end of my boots, which are really sharp. I mean, they're designed so your feet don't slip on ice. Well, they certainly didn't slip on Pemba's thigh either. At the time, I hadn't realised I'd hit him with the crampons and that I'd actually wounded his leg quite badly. And we're like two spiders with hanging beneath this cliff on our abseil ropes.
Pemba is badly hurt, but he and the other 3 Sherpas simply refuse to give up on Lincoln.
People say that the Sherpas should have left me when I was being really difficult, but the Sherpas just don't think like that. What they were engaged in doing was getting me down the mountain, and that's what they were going to do.
After getting Lincoln down the second step, they managed to put him on the radio. This is his transmission.
I'm doing the lethargy for about 4 people. Where are we? We're still at the second step. So, it's bloody tough up there.
Lincoln, do you copy?
Did you say do I cough? Or do I copy? Over.
Think of us and your family down here and keep on going. You've got 4 Sherpas there who respect you a lot.
But yeah, look, I don't know what time it is, but I'll talk to you when I can. Okay, thanks. Bye.
The Sherpas really struggled to get me as far as they could, but eventually they had to stop.
In an extraordinary feat of endurance, the Sherpas have dragged Lincoln as far as they can, But at 28,000 feet, they are still in the death zone. Running out of oxygen here means almost certain death.
When Lakcha, Dorji, Dawa and Pemba finally got me to the point where I spent the night, they could do nothing else. We had a 19-hour day there, and it wasn't 19 hours of descent. I mean, it was 19 hours of struggle. And so it was an extraordinarily hard thing for them physically. We'd all run out of oxygen, dehydrated. We were all close to death.
But that's not all. Lincoln faces yet another threat, the bitter cold. Frostbite is a result of the body's attempt to preserve its core temperature. Blood vessels near the skin begin to constrict, forcing blood to the essential organs. Without warmth, the cells in the extremities begin to freeze. Down at Advanced Base Camp, Kevin Orgello is realizing that time is running out.
The decision at some point has got to be made to leave him to die.
Yeah, but could you, your best friend? No way.
Yeah, but the decision has got to be made by the Sherpas and Alex. They can't. They're on a knife-edge ridge that only one person can walk by. You can't. If he doesn't want to move because he's just become completely delirious, what can they do? And at what point do you decide that? Because otherwise you're going to have one dead climber plus 3 dead Sherpas.
Yeah.
It is at this point that Lincoln slips into a coma due to cerebral edema. His brain is shutting down, and his respiration becomes barely perceptible.
From what I understand, they were monitoring my, vital signs. My breathing was getting less and less frequent and more shallow. They couldn't find a pulse. One of them poked me in the eye, to which I didn't respond at all.
At 5:20 p.m., the Sherpas declare him dead.
The decision has to be made to save the Sherpas' lives, and that's to leave Lincoln. Sherpas have been working at over 8,000 meters now for over 24 hours, and although the Sherpa people are very strong and very tough and very kind and loyal, there's only so much they can do before their own lives have been put at risk.
The Sherpas stay with Lincoln for another 2 hours, until finally expedition leader Alex Abramov orders them down. They take Lincoln's belongings, and he's left alone with no oxygen, water, or shelter.